If we return to our piece of wood which we put holes in earlier, I can demonstrate to you how best to use an impact driver. Now a lot of this again comes with some experience, because I find the impact driver needs quite a lot of feel in terms of how quickly to drive screws in. This is just a normal screw, it's got the curvy shoulders like I showed you on the little gold one. It's not the one that we're going to be using today, it's just bigger. And I will have to put a block of wood underneath to make my point, but I can just drive this straight in nice and quick. But it's less controlled, and more often than not I see a lot of beginners, people that have worked with me before, people that haven't used an impact driver. If you don't put the right amount of pressure in, this can happen. They'll start to mash the head of the screw because they're not putting enough pressure in, or they'll snap off one of the teeth on the bit. So I find it easier to do little bursts of driving with the screwdriver, like this. It's nice and controlled. It means I can make sure that no gap forms when the screw pushes through the first piece and starts to push on the secondary piece. Obviously you need to have it clamped tight together so you don't get a gap. Going slow like this means that you can make sure that that gap doesn't happen. And the thing's running out of power, fantastic. But the other thing that this obviously has is the hammer function. So that means that you can put the extra power and it will start to punch on the screw as well as turn it and really drive it into the wood, hence why it's called the driver. And it means that you can drive the screws in right flush. Although of course for the ones we're using today that won't be necessary because they're going to sit above the top anyway. So let me just give a minute and put this on charge because I forgot to, and then we'll get to putting the actual pencil pot together. One other thing I forgot to say, sorry, is that hammer function on the driver comes in automatically. Again, with better drivers than mine, you can alter the speed that it will run at. DeWalt ones and Milwaukee, etc. Ryobi, this one just does the one speed, but I don't mind. And the hammer comes in automatically when the resistance in the screw gets to a certain point. Then it will start punching on the back of it as well as turning. Before that, it'll let you have the level of control that you need. Okay, hopefully that's enough charge. I've selected the amount of screws that we're going to need. And call me a wussy, but I also do tend to put my earduffs on when I'm using the driver because that hammer function is quite loud. You could tell how it was affecting the microphone in the last few clips. It's really loud and then my voice sounded quiet because the microphone had to adjust. So in terms of putting these together, let me just make sure I'm doing it the right way still. So we can either just do this by hand, or you can make life easier for yourself and clamp these together. Nothing wrong with that. Make sure everything's lined up. And then it's as simple really as taking your driver, starting a screw off, and then start to drive in your screws. Make sure we've got no gap. If a gap does form, often you can get rid of it by backing out the screw, because by that point you'll have started to put a hole in the secondary piece of wood. So back out the screw so that it's only in the first piece, reclamp your wood nice and tight, and then go for it again nice and slow. You should get less of a gap. So let's do a second one here. Using my hand as well as the clamp to hold the two together. And there we go, two bits of wood joined together. And that's annoying. That doesn't normally happen, but we have had a little split there in the second bit, but shouldn't be too much of a problem. Should still be strong overall. So now we just move on and repeat and put the other bits on. Well, I must say folks, I am quite disappointed. 3 of my screws in the top there split the secondary board. I suppose that can only be down to the fact that I put them quite close to the end and the top of the boards here. Like I said about making sure you have plenty of meat. I thought that would be enough, apparently it wasn't. So there we go, even in my great wisdom I'm still making mistakes and still learning. But the thing is still strong. Our nice little cuboid here. It's a little bit squiff, admittedly, because again, maybe I didn't choose quite the right board. I think one of the edges had a bit of a slope to it, so they're not quite sitting at perfect right angles, but we have still pulled it into what I think is acceptable with the screws, and like I say, it's nice and strong. So the next and final step really is going to be to make our base fit and screw it in and call it there. So if we grab something to write on and something to write with, and our tape measure, 53 millimeters by 55, because there you go, it's not perfectly square. Just write that down so I don't forget. 53 by 55. I'll mark this up on here, and we might have to go and get the table saw out after all to make that the right size in this direction, just for that one little cut. But hey ho, at least I get to use my table saw. There you go, I've put it too high, it's rubbing all over the shop. Let's get it nice and low, get more control. You know what, looking at it, I can't be bothered to get the table saw out just for this one cut. And you can of course saw down the grain of wood. It tends to take a bit more time because a saw is designed to snip each fibre as it goes across them perpendicularly of the wood. So when you're trying to drive the saw down into with the grain of the wood, it doesn't like it as much. That's what an axe is designed to do, is split apart those fibres along with the direction that they're going in. But you can still do it, it takes a bit longer. Same process, start off nice and slow. And you often feel as if you're not making as much progress, because like I say, it's not what the saw is designed to do. It tends to take a bit longer and it tends to not feel as good, but you can still do it if you persevere. Okay, there's our little cube. We'll try and make him a little bit oversized so that he's got a nice snug fit, which means I just need to use my mallet here and just persuade him in. I think I might need to take just a little slither off, but I'm going to do that with the rasp. This is essentially a file for wood. Again, this was my granddad's, but I refurbished the handle. It's like a file for wood in that it's got big chunky teeth to deal with the more fibrous material that wood is. So I can just use this here to see if that's any better. We're getting close. So now just drive my screws in. And there we go. At long last, all of my pens and pencils have a home. So there we go, folks. Hopefully that was a nice little informative tutorial for total beginner woodworkers on how to get into making projects of the kind of thing that I do. And the sort of methods that I use, the processes I go through, the things I'm considering when I'm working, to hopefully get a good result every time. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and like I said at the start, if you enjoyed the video, do consider giving it a like and subscribing. We'll try and get some more of this kind of content coming soon. Yeah, thank you for watching. Goodbye.